It's a very sad story. And I got to know him. He was such a beautiful man, such a lovely man. Somewhere I saw footage and I saw this thing and I thought, well, surely you've seen this. That was a loss that clearly had a huge effect. The story and it's absolutely.
Imagine the panic hitting all at once, the sting of betrayal, the shock, the heartbreak detonating without warning. For the people closest to him, the truth finally snapped into focus. The man they had trusted for years wasn't confused. He wasn't overwhelmed. He had been playing a role the entire time. This wasn't bad timing or misunderstanding. It was emotional impact crashing down like a freight train. And while people kept searching police reports and official statements for answers, the truth had already revealed itself days earlier, out in the open, long before headlines locked onto the Sunday tragedy. The warning signs didn't whisper.
Look at him with his head kind of shaved. And I don't know if that's what he looked like, but he looks like he's got a screw or an evil screw. So he was 32 years old. He was at a holiday party hosted by Conan O'Brien.
Rob Reiner and Nick got into a, quote, very loud argument. His behavior at Conan's house alarmed the guests because it was so bizarre. One of the guests recalled Rob Reiner telling his son his behavior was inappropriate.
They screamed. What happened between Rob Reiner and his son that night wasn't hidden behind closed doors or buried in private conversations. It was loud, public, and impossible to ignore. The final blow-up didn't unfold in secrecy. It erupted in front of some of the most powerful people in Hollywood, and everyone in that room felt it. This wasn't a passing disagreement that fades by morning. It was the visible fracture of a family legacy, cracking apart in real time. The setting made it even more unsettling. Conan O'Brien's Christmas party wasn't just another industry gathering. It was sacred ground. A place where masks usually come off, where influence relaxes.
Telling guests at the party who wanted to call 911 to not do so. Obviously, Conan O'Brien is not responsible for this man's behavior. They had called, and Rob Reiner's son was placed on a psychiatric hold. Rob Reiner and his wife would probably still be alive today. Conan O'Brien stopped a friend from calling 911 during an explosive fight between Rob and Nick Reiner at the comedian's Christmas party, just hours before the director's son allegedly...
where laughter flows freely and defenses drop. The air carried the scent of pine, expensive spirits, and quiet confidence. Laughter echoed through polished halls. Conversations overlapped. Comfort filled the room. Then the doors opened. Rob Reiner walked in alongside Michelle Singer Reiner and their son. The energy shifted instantly. Smiles froze mid-expression. Conversations stalled. People didn't need explanations. Everyone sensed it. Something was wrong.
Tells NBC News that Nick allegedly interrupted a discussion involving comedian Bill Hader. After Bill told him it was a private conversation, Nick reportedly stood still and stared before, quote, storming off. E! News has reached out to representatives for Bill Hader for comment. 32-year-old Nick was arrested the next day for suspicion of murder and is currently being held without bail.
Reiner could face life in prison without the possibility of parole or even the death sentence.
Having the death penalty on the table is absolutely a bargaining chip. The prosecution is going to leverage that to try to get some sort of deal.
In a statement, the couple's two other children, Jake and Romy Reiner, said, "Word cannot even begin to describe the unimaginable pain we are experiencing. They weren't just our parents, they were..."
Rob wore that familiar grin audiences had known for decades. The warmth from The Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally. But up close, it didn't reach his eyes. His shoulders were tight, his posture guarded. He wasn't there to celebrate. He was there to hold his family together, to pull his son back from the edge before the world could see what was unraveling. Rob believed in systems, in structure, in the idea that the industry that built them could somehow fix them. But his son wasn't playing along anymore. With his head shaved and his eyes constantly scanning the room, Nick moved like someone on alert. Every step felt sharp, deliberate, charged. He didn't blend into the party. He cut through it. No warmth, no curiosity, just tension.
This is someone who also lived with his parents. Nick Reiner lived here with his parents. We still don't know who it was that made the initial call, but NBC4 Investigates also has learned that the daughter was here at the home when police arrived. Now, as far as Nick Reiner is concerned, the troubled son of Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner, who had been in and out of rehab, there was a documentary that was made about him that involved his father. NBC4 has now confirmed that he remains isolated from other prisoners. He's not in general population. He is under a video watch, if you will. Colleen and Michael, mean that everything he does is being watched and monitored on video. He is not in the prison system per se. He is in a medical ward in the prison system. And Nick Reiner right now remains behind bars without bail. When we see you tonight at 7, reaction to the death of Rob and Michelle Reiner that is still reverberating around the world. I'm Robert Kovacic here in Brentwood.
Then it happened. Nick drifted toward Bill Hader, a performer known for quiet kindness and gentle humor. There was no greeting, no handshake. Instead, Nick fired cold, piercing questions directly at him. What's your name? Are you famous? The words sliced through the room. They didn't sound curious, they sounded confrontational, almost cruel. Silence followed. Nick wasn't trying to connect. He was testing boundaries, asserting dominance, dismantling the world his father had built, one interaction at a time. His stare stripped people down, one conversation after another. It felt calculated, public, intentional. This wasn't chaos. It was message sending. Across the room, Rob froze. His heart pounded. This wasn't embarrassment anymore. It was fear. He saw something in his son's eyes, a detached, icy focus. Friends, colleagues. Decades of loyalty suddenly felt reduced to objects under inspection. The party's calm shattered. Laughter vanished. Music softened. And suddenly all attention locked onto the center of the room as the argument erupted. It wasn't quiet. It wasn't polite. It was raw. Guests who had known Rob for 40 years stood frozen. They weren't watching a director or a legend anymore. They were watching a father lose control, his authority breaking in public. Michelle, usually steady and composed, looked frightened. Her eyes searched the room as if looking for an exit that didn't exist. At the edge of it all stood Conan O'Brien, watching carefully. He understood what this was. Not an outburst, not a misunderstanding, but something darker. Control slipping away. Rob Reiner, the man who once commanded massive productions and guided entire casts, now stood powerless in front of his own son. The shouting eventually slowed, but the air didn't clear. Rob leaned toward a close friend and whispered something that landed heavier than any argument. I'm scared. I don't know what he's going to do next. The words hit like a sudden silence after noise. No one wanted to believe them, but everyone felt the truth in them. When the Reiners finally left, no one followed. No gossip, no chatter, just watching. Rob and Michelle walked toward their car like strangers bound by history more than connection. The night air was cold, the kind that burns when you breathe. The door shut. Music and warmth stayed behind. That car didn't just carry them home, it carried dread. Los Angeles glittered like it always does, pretending nothing was wrong. But everyone who watched them leave knew something had broken. That drive wasn't quiet, it was haunted. Saturday night was the warning. Sunday morning brought the reckoning. The sun rose over Brentwood perfectly, lawns trimmed, hedges immaculate. The estate looked powerful, untouchable. But inside, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, final. The argument was over. The noise had burned itself out. And then the first sound of the morning broke through. Not sirens, not alarms. The buzz of the gate. A massage therapist arrived, expecting a routine appointment. Another normal morning in a home built on order and legacy. She pressed the intercom. Nothing. Pressed again. Still nothing. The silence pressed back harder. The rhythm was wrong. Phones rang without answers. Something felt off, deeply off. Instead of calling emergency services immediately, she reached out to someone who knew that house intimately. She called Roy Reiner. Roy lived just across the street, close enough to feel safe. That call shattered the illusion of a normal Sunday. Roy didn't hesitate. She didn't wait for logic or reassurance. She ran, across a quiet Brentwood street, heart pounding, breath sharp in the cold air. Her mind raced. Maybe they were asleep, maybe phones were dead, maybe everything was fine. But deep down, she already knew. Something was wrong, or at reaching the gate. Roy Reiner and her roommate rushed inside, still clinging to the hope that something, anything, would feel normal. But the moment they crossed the threshold, the world shifted. The air felt wrong, heavy, too still. The familiar warmth of home was gone, replaced by an unnatural cold that settled deep in the chest. Every step echoed louder than it should have. Familiar rooms felt unfamiliar, almost hostile. Even the quiet creaks of the floor sounded like warnings. The house still smelled like home, but that comfort was twisted by something no one could name yet. And then she saw enough to know. We don't need to describe what Roy found. Her reaction told the entire story. She didn't scream, she didn't call out. She ran. She burst back through the front door and collapsed on the driveway, gasping for air as if her lungs had completely emptied. Within minutes, flashing lights cut through the hedges. First responders arrived, and with them came words no child should ever have to hear. Michelle was gone too. In less than 20 minutes, Roy went from checking on her parents to standing in a world that no longer made sense. The life she knew vanished in an instant. As detectives began their walkthrough, cameras flashed and neighbors whispered, but one detail cut through all the noise with terrifying clarity. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no damaged locks, no alarms. The scene was pristine. That single fact flipped the entire case upside down. This wasn't an intrusion from the outside. It came from within. It confirmed the fear Rob Reiner had whispered just hours earlier. I don't know what he's going to do next. The danger hadn't waited beyond the gates. It was already inside the house. The home wasn't invaded. It was betrayed. The door had been left open out of love, and that love had been turned against them. By evening, the Reiner estate was no longer a home. It was a sealed crime scene, a quiet, haunting reminder of what trust had cost. Roy stood behind the yellow tape, staring at the place that raised her, now hollow and lifeless. As shock overwhelmed her again, something else was already unfolding miles away. 15 miles away, to be exact. The city braced for chaos. Sirens, helicopters, a frantic search for a suspect spiraling out of control. But what investigators uncovered was far more unsettling than panic. Surveillance footage from a gas station near Exposition Boulevard and Vermont Avenue shattered every expectation. The video showed Nick Reiner calm, composed, disturbingly ordinary. No panic, no urgency, no visible fear. He walked into the store wearing a black and green jacket, a baseball cap pulled low, and a red backpack over his shoulders. He didn't rush. He didn't hide. He browsed. He moved slowly down the aisle, pausing at the coolers like someone deciding between drinks. He picked one up, checked the label, considered it, then stepped into line. He waited patiently behind strangers who had no idea they were standing next to the most wanted man in Los Angeles. No shaking hands, no darting eyes, just quiet control. That footage stunned investigators. What it showed wasn't confusion or a loss of reality. It was composure, cold, deliberate composure, the kind that made everyone watching realize this wasn't just a tragic breakdown. It was something far more chilling. Nick paid with a credit card. Swipe, receipt. Done. That small, mundane act hit investigators hard. The man accused of committing the unthinkable stood calmly under bright fluorescent lights, bought a drink, and blended back into normal life like nothing had happened. Even the cashier later told police he seemed polite and relaxed, completely normal. Experts noted something crucial. True mental collapse often leaves chaos behind, disorientation, panic, visible distress. But Nick's behavior wasn't chaotic. It looked organized, controlled, as if he had boxed up the horror, sealed it away, and flipped a switch back into functioning mode. He didn't drive straight from Brentwood to Exposition Boulevard. He used public transportation, calmly navigating routes, transfers, and timing like a commuter, not someone running blindly. Every move required planning and awareness. This wasn't confusion. It was calculation. Cameras eventually traced his path to a small hotel in Santa Monica. Inside that room, the situation turned even darker. Nick didn't collapse or lose control. Instead, he covered the windows with sheets, an act that immediately raised alarms for investigators. That wasn't delusion. That was avoidance. He knew people would be searching. He knew helicopters would be overhead. That room became a bunker. Forensic analysis later suggested it was likely used to clean up, change clothes, and erase physical traces. Every detail pointed toward intent, not panic. When Los Angeles Police Department finally located him, there was no chase, no resistance, no dramatic confrontation. Nick was walking alone. When officers approached, he surrendered quietly, following instructions without protest, calm to the very end. But the most telling detail came after the arrest. Nick wasn't placed with the general population. He was moved into a high-security medical ward under constant surveillance. Officially, the reason was protection. High-profile cases can draw danger behind bars, But insiders say there's more to it than that. That isolation isn't just about safety. It's about control. That medical ward is now the true battleground for what comes next. The legal fight over how this will be framed, mental illness or calculated awareness, will hinge on moments like that gas station video. The defense will point to the medical placement and argue he needs treatment, that he was disconnected from reality, that something inside him was broken. Prosecutors will respond with the footage, Nick browsing, Nick waiting calmly, Nick paying with a card. No confusion, no panic, just control. Their argument is simple and devastating. He knew exactly what he was doing. That's the part that unsettles everyone the most. The person in that video doesn't look like a monster. He looks polite, quiet, ordinary. Just a man under bright lights holding a drink, and a secret that shattered multiple lives. Brentwood and Exposition Park are only 15 miles apart, but the distance between the son Rob Reiner thought he knew and the man in that footage feels endless. That's where the real terror lives, not just in timelines or theories, but in what the evidence shows when emotions are stripped away. And as experts continue to analyze every movement, every pause, every decision, one thing becomes harder to escape. This wasn't just about what happened. Evidence doesn't argue. Physics doesn't negotiate. Biology doesn't care about opinions, reputations, or emotions. It simply records what happened. And when investigators stepped back from speculation and focused on silent facts, one voice helped bring clarity: Mary Ellen O'Toole. After decades spent reading crime scenes the way others read books, her analysis stripped away the drama and exposed something far more unsettling. The absence of forced entry wasn't just procedural, it was psychological. The danger didn't come from outside the gates, it came from within, from someone trusted, familiar, and already inside the circle. What truly shifted the case, however, wasn't just access. It was the nature of the injuries. The official reports use clinical language, multiple sharp force injuries, cold, detached. But to experienced profilers, those words carry a clear meaning. This wasn't random, it wasn't opportunistic. It wasn't driven by theft or panic. It was intimate, personal, the kind of violence that emerges when love mutates into fury. O'Toole called it exactly what it was: overkill. The force went far beyond what was necessary. That detail matters. Overkill isn't about efficiency, it's about emotion. It reflects a release of years of resentment, anger, and buried conflict exploding in a single, irreversible moment. The act wasn't just meant to end something, it was meant to erase connection. But what ultimately boxed the defense in wasn't emotion, it was science. In forensic terms, there's something known as slippage. When extreme force is used, the body reacts. Grips fail, hands slide. And when that happens, the attacker often injures themselves. Small cuts, abrasions, traces left behind. Those traces don't lie. Blood, skin cells, DNA. Evidence that can't be explained away with words. That's the trap. No matter how carefully someone plans, biology keeps a record. When blood and tissue mix, it creates what experts call a biochemical handshake. A time-stamped truth that places people together at the exact moment violence occurred. Not before, not after, right then. If Nick Reiner sustained injuries during the assault, his DNA wouldn't simply be present in a house where he lived. It would appear in the wrong places where it didn't belong, next to the very people he was meant to protect. Once biology is commingled, there's no undoing it. That scientific reality dismantles alternative explanations. No one entered later, no one stumbled onto the scene. The patterns inside the home told one consistent story. No signs of a search, no valuables disturbed, no chaos typical of a robbery. The target wasn't money, the target was human. Every detail pointed to intent. Whoever committed the act knew the layout of the home, the habits, the timing, the rhythm of daily life. This wasn't a stranger breaking in. It was someone already inside the walls, physically and emotionally. When the yellow tape finally came down and the forensic vans rolled away, what lingered over Brentwood wasn't just evidence. It was heartbreak, a silence heavier than grief. Forensics can explain how something happened. They can't explain why it hurt so deeply. The world didn't just lose a Hollywood icon, it lost a sense of safety. People who grew up watching Rob Reiner's films struggled to process what they were hearing. One comment online cut through everything else with brutal clarity: to give life to someone only to have that person end yours. That line landed hard because it touched the core of the tragedy. Rob Reiner spent decades creating stories full of warmth, humor, and hope. His characters taught generations about empathy, loyalty, and second chances. Off-screen, he lived those values, mentoring young filmmakers, standing up for causes he believed in, and lifting others whenever he could. He built. He didn't destroy. And that's what makes this so unbearable. The man who dedicated his life to kindness was undone by the very bond he cherished most. This pain goes beyond celebrity or fame. It strikes something universal. Parents protect. Children grow. Love is supposed to endure. Rob and Michelle Singer Reiner didn't fail because they didn't love enough. They loved fiercely, blindly, until that love left them unguarded. That's why this tragedy echoes far beyond Hollywood. It isn't just a crime, it's a heartbreak the world wasn't ready to face. Their story reveals a painful truth. You can have money, access, doctors, resources, and compassion, and still not be able to save someone who has chosen a darker path. That reality is brutal, but it's real. What happened in Brentwood shows that untreated struggles don't stay contained. They spill outward. They twist love. They leave scars that never fully fade. This story doesn't end with arrests or headlines. It lingers, unsettled and unresolved like a storm that refuses to pass. And with every new detail, the same question grows louder. How does love quietly become dangerous without anyone stopping it in time? This wasn't sudden. It built slowly. Pressure stacking day after day behind pristine gates and manicured hedges. From the outside, everything looked calm. Inside, trust was eroding. Now, even as the neighborhood returns to routine, something there will never feel the same again. The illusion that wealth or good intentions can fix everything is shattered. Rob Reiner spent his life telling stories about loyalty and standing by the people you love. That wasn't just art, it was belief. He lived it. Michelle stood beside him with quiet strength, carrying more than anyone realized. This case keeps forcing hard truths into the open. Struggles don't disappear when ignored. Love without boundaries doesn't always heal. Silence, even when rooted in hope, can turn dangerous. Maybe that's why people can't look away. Because behind the fame, this is about families everywhere, about questions we avoid, about red flags we downplay, about when care becomes denial. This isn't just a Hollywood story anymore. It's a mirror. If this story made you pause, take a moment to reflect and share your thoughts respectfully. Conversations about awareness, boundaries, and family dynamics matter. And if you believe stories like this should be told with honesty and dignity, like the video, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe for more deep, thoughtful Hollywood stories that don't sugarcoat reality. Rest in peace, Rob and Michelle. You gave the world more than it ever gave back.